So, let's see. Parking lot items. Ash, did you happen to have any updates on the security scanner tool? I mean, I know it wasn't a pressing item, but I didn't know if you.
No update on that.
Okay. Seems like the biggest item here is GDPR. Is that right?
Yeah, so I do have some updates here, guys, and it's kind of tied to the last bullet point here, process for update and pull request. So, how I've been explaining and kind of, you might think that I'm going in circles, but how we have this factory of engineering in ESW, which serves 50 plus companies, over $1 billion in revenue and stuff like that. And that's where I have a little bit of a problem adjusting DNN. Now, they're not used to working with 2 JIRAs. There are a whole slew of processes in place to work with the internal JIRA, people, budget, everything is lined up. And it is open source. They don't have any open source there. And I'm just trying to work with them to see what is the best way to move forward. Because right now what the holdup is, I was supposed to, like last week, write the specs and have either Sebastian or Mitch help out. I didn't do that because I didn't want to waste their time until I was 100% sure as to how we can proceed. Now, there are 2 schools of thought here. One is, even though the development is done outside the factory people, so to speak, they would want to, they're asking questions. What if there is a bug? Who will solve it? Right? How do we reach? How do we reopen the issue? They don't want to deal with anything outside because that's not in the process, right? It's just, if they go outside, right, then things will not be tracked in the matrix for which they're rewarded for. Right? It's all matrix. It's a very matrix-driven organization. So there is a little bit of I'm stalled a bit in terms of how to proceed with the pull request and all the open source contribution. Now, up until 9.2, it was not necessarily, the company engineering was not necessarily in the factory model. And that's why, and we worked quite a lot and everything was done. Now we are in this model. I'm still working through, and I have here Thomas here. He is the chief architect for DNN. And in fact, this morning we were talking about what is the best way to proceed. Now, there are 2 ways to look at it. One is the factory says, we want to treat DNN platform as a framework. Things like .NET framework, right? Where they don't test. They assume it's good. It comes from somebody, another organization, Microsoft Windows, IIS, SQL Server. They don't test. They only test the application. Now, we're not there, and I don't know if that's even the intention to separate it that way. That, if that were the case, that means the work that, for example, GDPR team does, it has to be fully QA'd, right? Otherwise, the factory, they would take it as is, right? If there is a bug, then so be it, right? The community helps, which is a very problematic situation because it's not only the community, it's all our Evoke customers and all that, and we don't want any of that. We want to make sure that ultimately the product is solid, it's QA tested. And so Thomas and I were kind of working with our manager. So there is a manager as well for DNN in the factory, and we are trying to work out how we can test it. I think that where we're stuck right now is who tests it, and how we test it, and how we give the feedback back to the original developer, because the way all of the pricing and all of that works is that unless things are all 100% done, the developer on hook is responsible. Well, I mean, here it's an open source. So I want you guys to have a little bit of patience there till, I think it's a matter of a couple of days. We should be able, at least my goal is to get GDPR as a first use case, to get it through the system, and then get on to other features. Thomas, do you have anything to add?
Well, not really, not much at this point. So I'm pretty new to how ESW is doing it processes, so hard for me to tell what and how we arrive, at a solution.
Yeah, so bear with us, guys. I think it's a good thing that we're having this friction right now. It will clarify many things for stuff to come in future. So, but that's where it's a little bit of a hold up there right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair enough. But your optimism for having something before DNN Connect?
In terms of our release or in terms of a process?
In terms of release?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we've got, I do think so.
Right. Good.
Speaking of releases, Ash, a question that's came up as I've been trying to help people fix things from 9.2. Do we have any idea what the effort is to get the NuGet packages published for 9.2?
Very good question. It's the effort is trivial. The only challenge now is that I don't have the password for that. And I had a password, and tell you what, I had the password. And because I am located in Canada, for some reason, it won't let me authenticate. It's an Office or Outlook email. I might share with you in good faith, Mitch, because you're in the United States, and then maybe I'll let you upload the packages. Because we do have the package. We do have the package, just a matter of uploading it, right? And just that account, if you try to send, like password, remember, it sends an email to a email that I don't have access to. So it's a little bit stuck from that perspective.
Okay, yeah. If there's something I can do to help with that. It's just as I'm trying to work with people that are trying to figure out. And the reason behind it is we have a lot of methods, right, that were marked as this has been replaced with something else, and some were removed, some weren't. The best quick way to test, right, is to move your version number forward and then move it back. But following the good practices without having that 9.2 release is making it a little bit hard. So anything I can do to help with that, just let me know.
Yeah, I'll share a password with you. Maybe you can help. Yeah. Okay.
Ash, there had been a lengthy discussion in the Facebook group of DNN Connect about GDPR, especially on the cookie consent. Maybe you have a look at it.
Okay. Oh yeah, didn't get a chance to go there and take a look.
Maybe it might be worth.
Yeah, I think Clint in the GDPR channel in Slack put up a link for someone who did a pretty robust GDPR cookie consent module for DNN.
Yeah, and that guy actually was hitting me up or hitting DNN Corp up on Facebook, like with that link. And so obviously, I was talking with him and I was like, you should really get into the DNN technology group because that's where a lot of the conversation.
This is a commercial module.
That's where a lot of the conversation is going on. Yeah, it is commercial. And I sent him invites to the group, 2 invites, and they're still pending. And for some reason, he can't get Slack invites. So I tried to get him involved, but I'm not sure exactly all the functionality of that module.
It might be worth having a look at the module, but I haven't really had the time yet to check whether the requirement, whether it overdoes the requirements or whether it's useful, because it does cookie consent for different types of cookies and you allows the user to select between, and of course the admin is able to specify each cookie being how it's been used and so on. So it's quite an extended version of cookie consent, even much larger than the one from Jeff Barlow. But I'm not sure whether this is really a requirement by GDPR law. But I haven't had the time yet to verify that.
GDPR requires only the one that are identifying. So for example, if you have just a session cookie or well, session cookie got destroyed anyways, but anything for your application to run, they don't care. I've read that. They care about the ones that will identify. For example, Google Analytics is all, yeah, they've written very clearly about which cookies are problematic, could needs to be in consideration versus not.
Yeah, what the module does is that it says, okay, those are required cookies for the application to run, so the user just gets informed about it. And those are cookies, for example, for like Google Analytics, where the user must have the chance to opt out. And there are other cookies for advertising also on where the user might deny placing it.
Okay.
So that's the idea of it. So maybe you have a look at the module. I haven't had the chance yet to review which how deep the decision needs to be in, or what are the real requirements by GDPR. And I'm quite sure that this hasn't been written down yet because it's technical details which are usually not in the law. But,
okay.
I still need to check how others implement it and what is the majority of the network of the companies doing, because I think that's where we should follow.
Yeah. In the end, of course, if we the bottom line is that we've got to be able to have a full framework for everyone without dependencies on third parties to comply with GDPR.
Right.
Anyway.
But the question is whether GDPR does require you to have all these details, which are nice to have in the framework or in an application with cookie consent, or if it's really a requirement, or if it's just a nice to have. And that's something I haven't reviewed yet, and I'm quite sure that this is not written down in the GDPR legislation. There might be some technical explanations appended, or there might be some others just added to the added or implemented by various people in the community or in the net. And if, for example, some other major CMS allows this flexibility, of course, we should consider having it as well. And otherwise, we say, okay, this is a basic requirement that is included in DNN, and anything else is nice to have and might be you might use a commercial or free module. The one from Joff is a little bit older. He didn't update it for 2 years, and actually you find the link and the discussion on Facebook as well.
Okay.
And I put a link to the Facebook discussion in Slack as well, so we can get it from there.
So anyway,
GDPR channel.
yeah. Do you guys also want to discuss the SQL changes to users and portals, etc., that Sebastian proposed last time? I don't know if Ash has ever had a look at that document, but I know Mitch and I have had a look at the document that Sebastian compiled with changes for about users.
And what's your take there?
I'm quite positive about some of the things. I mean, it's true that there's a lot of legacy stuff. There's some fixes to just the way things have grown, and I think they made total sense. And so I'm all for cleaning up stuff. and that is what it, for large part, boils down to. Plus, something that I would like to discuss more in depth with the group, which is how host users fit into a portal, which I lean more towards Sebastian's approach, where host users actually have a portal presence, if you like, because I keep running into this as a module developer, that host users just do not appear right on my not without extra coding, right, to drag out host users. Oh yeah, I want host users as well, but for the portal, and they don't have a profile of the portal. So if you take, for instance, the conference module that I did that manages the DNN Connect conference, a user can submit a session, and if that user is selected as a speaker, I have a nice page which displays all the speakers, and then there's bio and whatnot. But of course, if you're a host user on the site and you submit, I don't have, it's just weird in terms of code. You're like, oh, that person's first and last name never comes out, and to me that's just awkwardness in the framework, and I think it's good for us to reconsider how we do this, right?
Right. And there's regarding portal, user portal is user profile is one, and user portal there is an inconsistency from DNN 6, if I remember, 5, if I remember correctly, where it has been changed that every user, including a host user, got a user portal record, but it usually wasn't used, at least not the is deleted field. And but then it was shifted back as a version after, but the old one were not cleared. So in old installations, you have all kinds of super users which have user portals. For some portals, and for others they don't have this record. And in other situations, when the portal was added later, then they don't have a user portal record for that portal, and so it's not even the same user who has one and has not, but it might switch from user portal coordinate to the other for no reason. And so, in my opinion, we should make it straightforward.
There's that as well, and one thing that I've observed, for instance, also in day-to-day use, is certainly with the DNNConnect.org site, for instance, someone like myself will create both a host account and a regular account. And I don't know if you guys recognize this, if you're running a site, that you have two accounts, because one is a host account and it just does different things, right? And it looks different, the whole experience, than to your regular account. So I find that a workaround for the problem, and I think it should be addressed. There's one thing where I think it's even not ambitious enough, which is, you mentioned there are certain system profile properties, right? Some profile properties that people just should not delete, which I totally agree. But I think they should have been rolled into the users table. I still find it incomprehensible that we have first name and last name both in the users table and in the profile properties.
Yeah, and there have been, and the one which is leading has changed a couple of times. Usually it was the one from in the users table, then it was in the profile table. I think for a short time it switched back, but then it's now it is. And one module thinks this one is the leading one, and the other one thinks that one. I think especially with first name, last name, and eventually email address, it would be nice if you have simply an option to have a reference to the user profile in the have a reference to the user to the users table, and that would make.
But it's weirdness that we have system properties that are not part of the users table, because it's inefficient. And although you might argue, okay, well, that might change for depending on portal, right? Because the user profile is dependent on the portal.
Yes.
But of course, a first and a last name, it's hard to argue that should be in a profile rather than the users table. So because that's basically tied to a display name, right? I mean, we have the display name, we have first name, last name.
It's not tied to, but usually you set it up that you have both. And as a display name is tied to the user, where the first name and last name is written into the users and the profile table. And then you have the option that the display name can be combined from first name and last name,
Right.
but that's only in the users table. So it's a little bit of it is a mess, in my opinion, because it's very hard to understand. And on the other hand, we have hard-coded profile properties like street and so on, which are where the names are hard-coded in some modules, like the user membership module. And if you use it, I just had a support case in Facebook where user deleted some of the street or whatever, and from that moment, the module refused to work.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I think that, you know, in this group that we need to have a conversation around is exactly what the process is for the review of this. I know, Peter, you and I have looked at this document. I'm sure that a few others have probably looked at this document as well. Where I sit with it, my opinion's different than yours. I mean, I agree it would be great to move some of this behavior around. I have some security concerns around people are doing things today. Yes, it's a workaround, but it's a breaking change. If all of a sudden that super user account that nobody knows about that had that special behavior becomes publicly displayed in a membership directory that's available for everyone, well, you just made a hacker's life a hell of a lot easier. We've had enough egregious security holes. Don't even get me started about DNN article and their most recent one that leaks the entire web config, because that's awesome. I like the incremental changes. That change to me is a breaking change and much higher risk than other things. I think if we want to do a community review or whatever we need to do, I think we need to set up a protocol for reviewing to be effective in the management of the time in this group.
Mitch, you're not correct. Currently, the super users are listed everywhere in the users table, and if they're based on the viewed users, then they are included as well. Except someone says specifically removes the node or excludes all users with a super user flag, and otherwise some might be included, some might not. And in my opinion, this is not something we can explain why some super users are included in the user list and some others are not. And that's the current situation. And with user profile, the problem is, of course, super users do have a profile, but they use the profile properties from the host portal, which is portal ID -1, instead of the local portal. And this makes it even weirder that they have different user profile properties than all other users, and you usually don't get the a proper display of their profile in your module. Some module developers try to work around by switching the user ID, but in my opinion, it simply doesn't make sense, because we are inconsistent. And if we want to proceed developing DNN, in my opinion, we need to clean up the database to get more straightforward handling of our objects. Sorry for interrupting, Mitch.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, my point in that discussion is we're not going to agree. From a security perspective, we have an unknown behavior, but at least it's consistent. If we change that behavior to where things that are hidden today, whatever reason they're hidden, if we expose those, and that exposes something that gives a malicious user a username, or God forbid, the really stupid people that don't do good things in there, that's a change that can impact a risk. For me, I'm not comfortable with that with all of the other changes. I'm not judge, jury, and executioner here. But I am really personally incredibly fed up and hear a lot of feedback from people that 9.2 introduced a whole bunch of breaking changes. That changes a fundamental behavior. And again, what I want us to get to is a process and procedure for reviewing those. That's why my recommendation to you was for changes and any modifications that do get submitted to just submit them in, individual sections where it makes, where it's feasible and not going to cause, a lot of extra work. But that way, things can be included as reviewed. And that's just, if everyone else disagrees with me, that's fine. I just know that we need to find a way, right? The whole goal here is to create a procedure for a review and hey, this looks good. Let's take this from the community and let's get this going. Whereas, I think we've done those reviews. We're a couple weeks down. We're closer to the next release. I think we just need to have a process in place to be able to get there.
Yeah, but I think we needed, as you say, to agree first ideally before starting implementing whether we want to go there or not, because otherwise it doesn't make sense that someone puts in a lot of effort and then we say, oh no, it seems risky and maybe it isn't, but maybe it is, and we don't have the time, and so we simply put it aside and then it sits there for years. In my opinion, this doesn't make sense. And I don't really see a big risk because it's not a fundamental change. It changes location where things are stored. We can review, at least in the core modules, that they will, this is the ones which are shipped with DNN, that they will return the same results as kernel. And if there's a change, maybe we can put in a switch which is turned off by default, and upgraded users might need to enable it in order to get a change behavior. That's my idea. Of course, I do not want any breaking change. Of course, I do not want any, and maybe Peter can agree that I tried my best to not to introduce breaking changes wherever possible.
Well, the alternative is, if you want to get rid of the anomalies that there are, is that you remove the possibility to elevate a user to super user and back again. You just say, look, that just doesn't make sense, because super users apparently are not regular users, and so you can't switch between the two without causing data inconsistencies. And I still, it bugs me that we can't clean this up.
Yeah, and that's the situation. If you switch the user from an ordinary user to super user, then the profile doesn't switch to the central location or whatever, and you lose data. It's simply taken from a different place, and the data is missing and stuff like this. It simply doesn't make sense this way.
So anyway, but I think, yeah, it merits more discussion. And also my preference would be, if we do anything with this and the other points, that they're all lumped up into one release, like a 9.4 or something, where it's very clear to the community that we've tweaked this part of the platform. And certainly if there are breaking changes, of course, that needs to be communicated very openly.
Yeah, that's what I wrote, that it needs to be communicated up front. So module developers who created their own user management modules with their own data layer should be aware of it and should take care of it.
Yeah. So, anyway, next. And
so I think we still have to address the process problem. I think that's besides this specific area that people have different opinion. I've been looking into it. How we've been going sort of back and forth between Google Doc and Slack and and then Jira and whatnot. And I think I personally feel that we should now start using the issues in GitHub. It is public. Let people collaborate there. Because, you know, I know, Peter, you said you reviewed it, but there was no sort of your written comment as to what you felt.
No,
right?
not when I agreed. No, it's true.
Right. So even whether you agree or disagree, I think we want people to kind of participate in an open format. So unless someone has any objection, let's try using the issues. It's going to start with a clean slate.
Yeah.
Let's start putting our thoughts, whoever wants to put anything, and it's kind of open for everybody to participate. And then how we decide is a different thing, but at least let's have an open discussion now there, and let's start people putting some concrete comments there.
Let's try that. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I allowed to create this kind of aggregative issue?
So this aggregated issue is very difficult. I don't know if issues allow us to put labels there. If it does, we should explore that. Can we lump sum this into a data? Like we should. I mean, internally, this group should be smart enough to put appropriate labels. So that way we can combine them, but don't put that in as a one PDF document. It has to be each issue has to be one by one.
Yeah, each needs, but we have dependencies, of course, and therefore we should have a, what do you call it? This major this is master item.
Epic in the Jira. Yeah,
should be an epic. So it's clear that it's put together.
Yeah, you should be able to link, right? You should be able to link from one to the other.
Okay, and I can simply put in epic is just a tag, or what it is. This epic.
Yeah, you can't do epics in GitHub. I don't think. But
in GitHub or in GitHub or in Jira. Sorry.
We were thinking about moving to GitHub very soon. There are several reasons why we would like to move away from Jira and onto GitHub, and I agree that we should give that a shot. But that means that there's no such thing as an epic. But of course, you can reference from one to the other, just basically in text or in your description.
Okay.
We're just gonna have to find our way through this, how this will work for us.
So I just posted a link to the issues, and I enabled it. It was not enabled for the reasons because we were using Jira and we didn't want two places to do it. So I've just enabled issues there, and then we'll simply, I think it has the ability to do labels. We should be able to maybe type a new, click on a new issue to see if, Clint, if it lets you.
I see the button, yeah, it can see, okay, yeah.
Does it let you create an issue with a label? Or someone else can do that later?
Yeah, I think labels are an administrative feature.
Okay.
Yeah. You might click on the labels, not yet, but if you click edit, then you can add the labels, I think.
Yeah, labels is in the right sidebar. I think if you hover.
Yeah, none yet, right?
Oh, you don't have permissions maybe to label?
Yeah, it looks like you're not a project owner. You need to be a project owner, I think, to label.
Brian, do you have permission?
It's probably better if I'm not.
Yeah, let me get there and see if I can.
Maybe you can grant, but I'm not sure, permission to add labels to other users as well.
Yeah, I have permissions.
You can, right? So these are the same labels that are used in the pull request. So which is going to be a little bit of a weird situation, but I don't know if there's any other, won't fix, okay. Projects, there is also a project here, right? I don't know what the project is. So we'll just have to figure it out. I'm sure we're not the first one.
Yeah, projects are like Kanban boards. You can have a
Okay.
number of swim lanes that you move issues through.
So
And so-
why don't we, Sebastian, why don't you add a couple of your issues here and see?
Okay, and I try. I'm for sure. I don't have the option to add labels or a project or assign to a project. But if someone like Brian can do it, then
Yeah, I think Brian can do that. He has enough knowledge to put the right labels.
yeah, would it make sense to create a label for it, or would it make sense to make a project, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, one of us should take a look as to what is the most effective use of this tool without creating a lot of overwork. Keep it simple, maybe. Keep it simple for now.
Yeah, I think for now I would say let's just keep it at issues, and then if we get to a point where it's unwieldy, we can try to organize them into projects.
Okay. Good, I'll copy it over.
And that way you guys can just go in real time provide your feedback, right? Because it will be available to the larger community as well.
Mm-hmm. Understood. But at some point we need to make a decision whether.
Yeah, of course.
How to deal with it, and ideally before I start implementing.
That's for sure.
Now, the other day I was looking into some other stats about researching on different project and how people measure how active this open source project is. And I think the GitHub, any noise on GitHub adds to it, right? Whether it's issue count or pull request and whatnot. So, the more we do here, the better the visibility we'll have over a period of time.
Okay. So do you plan to switch over all the issues from Jira to
No,
GitHub?
we're not going to dump, right? We'll just case by case. Now, this is a small group, right? We would try to manage it, try to keep it what we can actually do and what we want to discuss, right? Jira has had, like, we've done bulk closing of issues in Jira several times, like thousands of issues. If we go there, I don't know how many issues are there. Start with a clean slate. If there are some important ones that we need to discuss, then let's discuss and bring it here.
Yeah, but does it mean that later on when I'm going to implement, I need to create all the issues in Jira as well?
We're not going to duplicate it. No, it doesn't add any value in duplicating that. So
okay.
That way you can submit a pull request. It would have the right context right then and there.
Okay. So we have two separate documentation system for bugs and for enhancements, right?
Let's see how it is, Sebastian. Don't question too much.
Yeah, sorry. Just need to try to understand.
Yeah, for now.
Ash, are we still going to need to tag our commits like we used to with the like the DNN-ID?
Well, if there is no DNN in this particular case, right? So I don't know how you would
be able to use number notation. So you could do like a hashtag and then your GitHub issue, and it should automatically sync when you push your changes to the repo.
Right, yeah. And it would automatically link to the issue as well, right? So you can see
Yeah. So if you're in the issue and I make a commit, and even if it's in a fork and I make a commit and I reference that issue, it'll show up in the history right there, and people can go straight to that commit.
Let's use that. That's even everything at one place.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So I'll create it. Okay.
And Sebastian, as Mitch was saying, I do echo some of his concerns. So anything that's an incremental change is an easy one, which has little impact. I think we should try to do that as opposed to getting something that has a security issues. And because I do agree with some in Evoke Engage, we have gone to the extent that if you're a super user and you post something in there, we actually show you as an anonymous as your display name. There is special code in there to do that because it was, yeah, I don't know where it came from.
But that will still be the same because you will query the super user flag, which is still the same. And as a display name is simply in the users table, and I am not going to touch that.
Yeah, so we need some more thought around it.
It simply tries to streamline what currently is, because currently you have both situations. You have super users with and without, and you can switch to a user from ordinary user to a super user and back, and then it uses different profile, and no one understands why, because it's not logical in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's the same when you do an auto install versus a wizard install. It creates users slightly differently, and you get different behavior.
In my opinion, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so if you have questions or you have concerns, please try to explain, and I will try to evaluate, and if it's valid, of course, I will take care of it, but currently I don't see any. Because it doesn't change which users are displayed or which users are not displayed. It simply streamlines what's currently there. It makes user behave like the other ones, so we don't have to trigger to tackle them differently in your program. It should make it easy for all the platform developers and for the module developers, because I don't need, if it's a super user, I have to, I get different profile. It doesn't work like what I did before, and so on. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And I noticed it when I tried to optimize the code for the indexing of users for the search index, and I noticed that there's a lot of inconsistencies which don't make sense, which affect performance, which and affect functionality. That's the idea behind. It's not copying over some solutions I have from in my turbo scripts or anything else. It's not connected to it. It's just during my work with the turbo scripts, I noticed the same issues, and I said, okay, we should streamline the core.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So what else do we want to discuss?
Actually, in the last meeting, we had talked about blogs around GDPR. I don't know if that's still a topic.
So I think we've been talking about two things. One is the product related, and then one was non-product related, right?
Right.
So the first one, pre 9.3. I don't know if there is anybody anyone wants to take a stab at it.
And then now that Andrew's back, if he's got any NBC updates, I know he posted a blog.
Yeah, I don't have any real updates from last meeting, except I did a user group presentation for Southern Fried, and I put together a blog article that's documenting the new routing controls. I'm planning to update, or not update, but add a community blog, which is just a cross post of my current blog, the MVC routing stuff, so we can have that on the community blog. And I've just been, if you haven't been noticing, in the general channel, I've been doing, opening up some threads for us to discuss different things in the MVC platform, and just kind of stuff to start thinking about for when we do the Razor Pages implementation later this year, because it's all going to be dependent on the MVC platform.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, regarding the blogs, especially the post blogs, I think we need the implementation first, because it wouldn't make sense to describe anything we haven't been implemented, which might be implemented.
Yeah, so we're not ready for the post 9.3,
Yeah.
right? But pre 9.3, that's what.
Yeah, I will try to do anything on it, but I need a little bit of time for it. So hopefully next weekend.
All right, was that all the items for today? Anybody else got anything we want to discuss?
I have one question. Is there anybody here that has a little bit of spare time that knows a lot about the file management APIs? I've been getting a bunch of requests to get the DNN documents module to work on 9.2. And there's a lot of API methods that are no longer there, and I have not a clue how to translate them because I've never used those APIs.
Documents module, which one are you talking about?
The really old crappy VB.NET documents module.
Hey, that thing's in use all over the place. We run into it all the time.
Actually, you know the one who's talking about the DAM module, the digital asset management.
No.
I'm talking about
DNN documents.
Chad, it's DNN documents right now. After stuff closed down, I moved it over to GitHub. I got at least half of the stuff, the broken stuff fixed, but there's some stuff with file permissions and folders that I, A, don't know all of the changes and the best way to work around it, and B, I don't have the time right now. So if anybody has a few moments, that would be awesome.
It's not really in my best of interests.
You can do it under a fake name if you need to.
I could tell you, I'm getting customers because Evoke just trashed their document solution.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would have kind of expected this module to die, but it's that module that won't die. So,
right, no, I mean, it obviously people still need to store documents, that's for sure. And, you know, that it does need to survive in some form or another.
It's different from Evoke or from the DAM module because it doesn't display the documents in a folder. It allows you to upload a document and whatever, and simply provide it as a link on your site.
It's a list and link pretty much is all you get.
Yeah.
Really, we only run into this with old sites, you know, people trying to upgrade and that kind of thing. It's not
it's always
any
the
new
problem with these things. It's hard to motivate people to help for the few migration scenarios that still, you know, migration things that still exist with people that are on a DNN 4 site or something and reach out for something.
There's not, as far as I know, there's not even a commercial, a simple solution for it. So if you have an old site, you need to migrate, and you need to totally different approach to, for example, put them in the same folder and create some and try to do it with user files with a DAM module, but it's not really a trivial solution.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's just, you know, I mean, there's the downloads. I mean, it's it's kind of crazy, right? This thing has been starred by 6 different people. It's being watched by 5, and it averages 10 to 12 visitors a day on GitHub, which is just kind of crazy. I don't have time to look at it, and I keep getting nagged by a couple of people. That's where I need to be able to get if I can get a 9.2 NuGet package to at least figure out, did I fix all of the stuff that was broken? And at least if I fix those where we can get something that runs on 9.2, that'd be awesome. But I'm going to go ahead and guess that these file APIs were also removed in 9.2.
I'm not sure, but in any case, I mean the DNN Core file APIs. I've never been a huge fan of them, so yeah. Hence my own.
Very messy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I mean, it was put it this way. I mean, I think, you know, when like so often you look at code and you go like, oh, I can see the developer's thinking here, but that doesn't cover the scenarios that I'm thinking of. So, you know, good luck to him, but you know, I have to do something else, and that certainly was there for the because people ask me, so why can't you use the DNN folder provider there? And the answer is because it doesn't support the security that goes through it, right? That I need. And well, you know, it's too bad. It's just the way it is, really. But you know, I don't think I could be of much help here. I probably have to devote as much time as you into figuring out where things were and where things went.
Okay, I had a feeling that was going to be the case.
Yeah.
I'll keep asking around, and once we get the 9.2 package, I'll try to do something to see if I can.
But I think in DNN 9 before 9.2, these interfaces which are broken have to be deprecated, and usually there should be an information which method to use instead. So that should help you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because the old one were using file system utilities from library utilities or whatever, and it really was a little bit weird.
Well,
I understand why it was replaced.
Yeah, that's right, Mitch. If you now open the solution against DNN 9.1.1, I mean, there are no methods that were removed that were not marked as deprecated.
Yeah, I know, but there's some that were marked as deprecated in really old versions.
Oh, okay.
And I'm trying to look at, is there a low-hanging fruit of this one was marked, but it wasn't actually removed, and we can let it slide for a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for the quick hit, because the ones that need changing, unless I can find somebody that really knows those APIs, there's probably 40, 50 hours worth of development and testing just to try to unravel it on a simple 2-view module.
Yeah. Nope.
And with all of this activity and all of the other things, I don't have the time to dedicate that to that right now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure any one of the developers. I think it was these changes were developed in DNN 6 or 7 by DNN Core, and I'm not sure anyone from the community was involved who's currently active in the community. So
yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I inherited this project, gosh, early 6 days. So,
yeah.
All right, and I'm sorry, I got a meeting I got to drop off to here, but
might try to connect to contact Will Morgenweg. Maybe he knows who could help.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in Hawaii somewhere, probably. I don't know.
Yeah. They might have email in Hawaii as well.
Yep. All right, guys.
Thanks, everybody. I gotta run.
Okay.
All right. I think we should call it a day. Well, actually, yeah, there was an interesting thing. I saw, Sebastian, you had a proposal for a new approach to SQL scripts that you shared with me today.
Give me a second. I created a. If you're interested, I created a short PowerPoint.
Should I, yeah, exactly. Or shall I do a 1-minute review of what you told me?
Yeah.
So basically, instead of going through incremental scripts for everything that we do with SQL, Sebastian said, why don't we just drop, and correct me if I'm wrong from understanding what you wrote, why don't we just drop everything that's not like data, so in other words, views, functions, and stored procedures, and rebuild upon every install. That means that the install file, right, the file that rebuilds, so to speak, all this stuff, is much easier to compare from one version to the other to see what what changes are there. I thought it was an interesting, a novel approach to how we do sort of scripting, and it merited maybe some thoughts from this group.
So would you drop the tables first?
No, not the data, just everything around it, right? The whole shell that you built around it in SQL.
I created this a quick PowerPoint. Maybe that helps a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If I try to get it,
we can see your screen. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So currently we have this situation for the core that you have the SQL data providers for each version, and you have an uninstall, and then you have the install data provider, which is really a huge work. I think Ash, you already created one for DNN 9, and I think it must be a huge work because you have to collect all the changes in between and put them into one big script. And then there's a schema SQL data provider which installs all the schema, and there's a schema and there's that data, so they are currently called, I think. So there's very huge scripts which are really hard to maintain. Am I right, Ash?
Yeah. It's problematic too. It's actually several days worth of work to consolidate them and then keep finding bugs. So
yeah. So that is really a big mess, and for extension developers it's about the same, because they have these incremental SQL data scripts where you create your tables, indexes, and constraints, and for next version you have some changes in the table where you have a new field, a new column, and then you have to adapt all your copy over all the stored procedures which are affected, and you have to drop them and re-add them, and then you have to, if you have a new stored procedure, you have to put it in here, and you have to put the drop statement into uninstall. And if you have a large module, you might want to have this roll-up install script as well, which makes it even for module developer very complicated. So this is really a big mess, and so you have versions of procedures, functions, and views which are in multiple scripts, and if you want to see what has changed between one version of a SQL stored procedure and the previous one, you have to get the stored procedures from different scripts and try to compare, which is not really easy to do. You have huge files, you have duplicate content in install and upgrade if you have this roll-up script. And it's very easy to miss putting a procedure update in a script, and then you wonder, you already executed it locally on your SQL server, and then it doesn't work when people get your module or when it gets into production. And many developers forget to put the drop copy over the drop into the uninstall script, and then you have a lot of leftovers. As I know, at least half of the modules, I would say 80% of the extensions I know have problems with uninstall. So my suggestion would be that we don't only have, that we, in addition to the one we currently have, that we have in addition a pre-SQL data provider and a post-SQL data provider, which means the pre would run before any install or upgrade or even uninstall, and which drops all the procedures, functions, and views. And the post would create all the views, function, and procedures. And you could have one file, or you can have multiple, like here displayed as a problem with any and other. So they're just in alphabetic order to be executed. So you can structure your SQL or the SQL code. And so it gets executed, uses pre, where you say drop all the procedures, and then you get them from Z to A. Sorry, the first one needs to be a pre.
Yeah,
sorry, this is typo. Sorry, and then you have in your version scripts, which are the same as current. You do simply create the tables, the indexes, and the constraints, or you do an alter table or alter index or whatever. And at the end, all the stored procedures, views, and functions are created. And of course, the developer is still in charge for the ordering, making sure that the dependencies are in place, but therefore they are in proper order being executed. And that makes it sense to, so you only have one file for each stored procedure, and you edit for a new version of your module, you edit the stored procedure in place instead of copying over and modifying in a different script. And if you do an update, then you have this pre and you have the install maybe, and then you have, it's about the same procedure as before. But in the install script, you like for the core with your scripts, you only have the roll up for the schema tables. That means create table, alter table, create indexes, creating constraints, which is much smaller than currently with all the stored procedures. And if you want to do an uninstall, you simply do the, sorry, post, here it should be post and post. So you do the, simply, it's pre and pre, you simply run the uninstall for all these procedures, views, and functions. And in your uninstall script, you simply have to drop all the tables, which is very short and which shouldn't change very often.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, no, sorry, go ahead, I'll let you finish.
And the other idea would be if you do a reinstall of the same version, it could run this this pre-data, then you might, this is something, therefore it's in red, for the current version you rerun the SQL data provider, I explained that a little bit later, and then you do the post, so you always know that you have the current code, your current stored procedures, views, and functions running, so you don't have to deal, did I forget something to put in or not? This
is actually a more, even a more interesting selling point for me, this part. Yes. Because it means that if you have a module install and the script breaks at some point, then or there is some kind of anomaly, you can kind of elegantly come back to something.
Yeah. You can simply say, oh, I forgot something, I have a bug in my module. You simply recreate the same module without needing a new version, and you can simply reissue it. And of course, this is a breaking change that the same script is run again, and therefore I would like to have a manifest option to be 100% backwards compatible, that you say, okay, rerun script is equal 1 because you know that your script might be rerunnable.
Right.
It should be currently, but I know 80% of the developers forget to test whether a change has already been employed.
Yeah, I hope you don't need to list every goddamn script after that in the manifest, because it gets a bit
No, it should be only this rerun script equals 1, and anything else is just by name, like the current script.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's where I say, okay, you have to, I can show you, like here you have a naming conventions, you have first the post, which is the one for installing anything, or you have post for with an any in between, where it's simply put in anything which starts with post and then ends with SQL data provider, and anything in between is being executed in alphabetical order, and ascending for post and descending for pre, so you can have the same name for pre and post. But if there are DC dependencies, we make sure that it won't break. And so samples are, you see at the bottom, there are samples like post block, SQL database, post files, post users. They will run simply in this order. If you need a different order, you might precede it with numbers, but that's up to you as a module developer. You have to make sure they're in alphabetical order and work well.
So what are your thoughts, the rest of the team? Ash?
Yeah, it looks interesting to me. I do know that we certainly have a problem. It's too hard to chase what is, I mean, there's the guy doing the review has no idea what is being changed.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
My only comment here is that, like, are we, like, is this, if we are looking at updating this, is there do we have to look into from a different perspective? Is there a better way do we look at it in a holistic way? Again, I don't want to create overwork, kind of like how Andrew is looking into MVC, something that you do, the investment that you could use for the .NET Core as well.
Right.
It's time to look at it from that angle, the entire database.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for me, this is more a very, very pre discussion, right? I mean, this is not something you would consider in the short term anyway. I mean, this is probably when we start to look at .NET Core and how the installer might be revised, how things in the whole platform could work differently and better, given our experiences over the past few years.
But it shouldn't be very hard to implement, because we currently already have this structure. Simply has to run this check for files 3 times, and then it will make life much easier for module developers. Of course, not for your old modules, but for new modules which you create, you have a better structure. You have you can structure your modules, your SQL code into multiple scripts, all your stored procedures. You simply put together all the schema changes in one script, which are much easier to review, because usually we do not have many schema changes.
Right. But just a sec. I mean, yes, definitely. But for instance, it has an impact on the manifest to give but one.
But if
example. Yeah, and I think there you would want to look in more detail. Like, are you going to ask that people, and how far are they required now to name scripts in the manifest that is currently the what we do, or do we just say, okay, anything in the root of the zip that is named according to this convention gets run under these and these circumstances, right? There's a slow movement away from being explicit and having everything flexible, that we can define where things are, et cetera, to doing things by convention, which is where MVC is, for instance, right? It's all about conventions, and in DNN we're also making that shift. So in light of that, do we also start to approach this differently for the module developers, to make it simpler, to say, okay, well, if you just stick to this convention, things will work, right? But you don't have any control over the certain tweaks. Like you said, for instance, my convention is going to be, I'm going to run them alphabetically, end of story, right? So you just have to stick to that convention. And I think it's fine to have these kind of conventions. They just need to be made explicit and clear. But as we would delve into it, I wouldn't rush this into any new release without giving it a thought of where we want to take the whole install experience. And but anyway, I definitely think it's a very interesting approach to rethinking how we control the schema on the server.
But I think that's how it currently works, that you have some SQL files in your data provider folder, and then it simply runs by numbers, right? It checks the number and then writes and then runs them without. There's a little bit more, but it doesn't check for the. They don't need to be listed in the manifest.
Okay, well, I still do, but indeed, it's the numbering that determines it. I don't have the issue of the rollup script. Actually, I mean, I generate those using my own, code generation, SQL extraction utility. But yeah, these things can definitely help.
I know that you have created your own building experience for your site, but I think a lot of module developers, especially those struggle with it. And if we can make a recommendation, I think it would be much easier.
Absolutely. Anything that we can make it easier for them, that's always better.
And it should be no breaking change, so we simply add, so all existing modules will continue to work, because we should check for the files. If they're not there, who cares?
Yeah.
And if they're there, then we have additional functionality. That's the idea. And mainly it's an enhanced naming convention, and that's it.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Okay, definitely silence. All right, guys, it's like 10:15 in the evening here, 20 past 10.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna
head
off as well.
All right, guys, then we'll talk next week.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
I put it on the document.
Yeah.
Put a link in Slack so other people can review it as well. Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thanks.
All right. See y'all.
See y'all. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.